All right, so this is Brian and Professor Brett. There he is on Jackson Street, walking to Mill 5 for our Jack on Film show. Here's what it looks like. This cool, I think it's 1873 or something. This building was built, and there's my partner in crime, and this is how you get into this place. And I love this little ode as you approach the front door. There we got our man representing right here as you go into the building. It's no less than Jack saying hello to everyone who gets here. So here we are. All right, there's my happy partner. And so here we are in this historic building, which I just absolutely love. Look at how cool this is. There's the performance space where Amram played when I first came to Mill 5 many, many years ago. And here's the little record store. And hey, man. Oh, and there's the poster in the window for today's show. Just look at all the ways the different storefronts are all completely unique. And I just absolutely love it. Here's this coffee place is really cool. I'll be back here in a little bit to get some coffee. There's another poster. Is that where you're meeting him, at the coffee place? So. It's sort of like a little mini Main Street from, like, I don't know, 1920 or something. Classical Americana. Kerouac and Cassidy playing chess. The battery is just about to die. Oh, look. Nice. Ding, ding, ding. And here we are at the theater. Hello. Hey, I'm Brian. I'm doing the show at 6. Hi, Sydney. Nice to meet you. And that's who just said I'm Sydney. And so here we are. And, oh, and here's all the beers. I do appreciate that. And that. And okay.
All right, hello and welcome everybody to one of our remaining events of Lowell Celebrates Kerouac. It's been a wild weekend. I'm Mike Flynn, president of Lowell Celebrates Kerouac, for anyone who hasn't been to any of the other ones. But for those of you who have, I think probably like me, you may be looking forward to spending some time in one of these comfortable seats in the Luna Theater for a little while and enjoying some fantastic programming that we have in store for us. I want to make 2 little announcements. If you look outside this door, you can see a sign with the bathroom code on it. The bathrooms are right behind the screen over here. And there's a bucket right next to it. This event is, of course, free, but any donations, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, all volunteer organization putting on this festival, so any donations are always gratefully accepted. And without any further ado, I want to introduce the man himself, Brian Hassett, along with Julian Ortman for Brian Hassett's Jack on Film, Take 2. So Brian, take it away.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so just real quick, who here saw this last year? Sure. Oh, a whole bunch of people. All right. Cool. So there's different clips, different movies, all sorts of stuff this year. I mean, this time, take 2. So, oh man. So one of the things, I got this idea for like take 3. One of the ideas that I would like to do is, because we're going to kind of burn through everything as quick as we can for this to try to get to 8:15 for Big Sur and Michael Polish. Last year we had the actor who best portrayed Jack on screen, Vincent Bellestri, and this year we've got the director who directed the best film adaptation of Kerouac. So we're going to kind of burn through this stuff, but because I want to have this, I like to have this as sort of a colloquy, so that like you're all film fans and you're all Jack fans. So anybody, you know, feel free to, you know, yell out stuff if you've got an observation or anything. But like I say, that like to do a full take 3, I have this idea of like what I might do is have all the movies like on a board on stage, and then let the audience just sort of call out. They'd say, "Oh, let you pick which one we want to go into," and then we could just talk for as long as we feel like talking about that particular film or TV show. Because I like that. I like the idea of it being an interactive thing, including because film is the most collaborative art form. There's the script, the director, the casting, the acting, the sound, the art direction. All of these different elements come together to make a film. And so you know, it's sort of the ultimate art form that our species has come up with. There's more different people involved in a movie, in the vision of a film getting to a screen, than there is in any other art form. And so it's fitting that when we do it, it ought to be collaborative with the audience. So it's not just me yammering away and showing clips, but you know, people can jam. So that's just an idea. So like I say, if you've got anything pertinent, blurt it out. Then the other thing I like about what's going to happen tonight is you're going to see like a kaleidoscopic collage of images, of interpretations of Jack. There'll be two times you can actually see Jack, and the rest of it is all people interpreting him. And you know, there's no definitive you know, film. He made Poe Daisy, but he only narrates it, and wrote the original script it's based on. So by the time this thing is over, I like the idea that you're going to have seen everybody from Keanu Reeves to John Belushi to Jean-Marc Barr all interpret Kerouac, and kind of, to me, it's almost like if we could make a collage. This would be a good image for next time, to take one still of each of the interpretations and kind of, you know, do like an artist's canvas with paint on it, you know. So it all kind of collages together. I think that's a neat thing. And then the other thing about film is that when you read a book, you are making a movie in your head. From the words, you imagine what the characters look like, you imagine what the room looks like. So you're making a movie in your head as you're reading a book. Well, here we're going to see 16 examples of how somebody took the vision out of their head, worked with other people, and made something that's on the screen. So that's a cool thing. And so it's the idea of, and that's why, you know, people often like criticize or complain about it, because it's like, well, that's not the way I saw On the Road, or Big Sur, or Subterraneans, or anything else. But you know, like newsflash, everybody in this room has a different interpretation, a different movie in their head for every book Jack ever wrote. So there's no, you know, definitive way to do it. Every person in this room directed a movie. We'd all make whatever it is, 50 different movies. So it's kind of neat that we're gonna get like 16 examples tonight of how somebody took the vision inside the noggin and got it onto the screen. And so we're gonna zip through these things. It's gonna be more like a Ramones concert than a Dead show, because we're gonna be some Ramones fans in the audience. We're gonna be zooming through this stuff. There'll be clips for everything, and they're about 2 minutes each, and it's gonna span 1959 to 2013, which is 54 years. And Brother Mike, who's a cinephile himself, pointed out that people have been interpreting Kerouac for half as long as talkies have been in existence. So that's pretty neat. 54-year span of him on screen, and talkies have been around for less than 100 years. So that's kind of cool. Just also I want to start out with some thank yous. This thing wouldn't exist without this guy here, Julian Ortman. When I had the idea to do this thing, I was like, I don't know how to edit all these clips and everything. And I was like, who is that guy? Wasn't there a guy at LCK a couple of years ago who made a movie there? And I was like, tracked him down, wrote him. I said, you guys made the movie, and he wrote back these 6 words that we should all remember. If you're taking notes tonight, write this down. The phrase, how can I be of service? That's what he said to me. And if we all could remember and say that phrase more often, what a wonderful world this would be. And then I got to thank Brother Mike for coordinating this thing, the showrunner for this episode. And of course, we're thankful to the Mill 5 people. That's Jim, who owns the whole building, and Ben and Ted out there making this happen. And Jerry Cimino, who is in the house. I love the gaslight finger snapping. For introducing me to Michael Polish. And he and I started to hit it off, and he's really into it, the director of Big Sur. And you know, a lot of times artists of every discipline don't want to revisit something they created any time in the past, let alone 10 years ago. And so he really does, and it's really neat that, you know, that he is still as passionate about Jack as he was before he made Big Sur and 10 years after he made Big Sur. So that's really cool, and that whole thing wouldn't have happened if not for the Beat Museum founder, Jerry Cimino, who I'm so honored and happy has made it to this show. And then last but not least, but Brian Habniski, who is from Winnipeg, and is doing the live stream. He and I have been involved in pranksterish activities since I think 1977. So that's a hell of a streak we got. And here he is in Lowell. And then we got Yule Gardner over there on the, filming it for the video, which then I can turn into sort of another movie because we'll have it on Digi. And also, FYI, this whole thing, by the time you leave here, there will be a YouTube video of it. So if there's anything you missed, or what the heck was he saying about that, or what was that clip, or whatever, you can just go home and watch and look up anything you want. So, that's most of that stuff. I also just want to do a quick shout out to, there are other portrayals of Jack on film, that we're not going to cover, because in movies such as the excellent Go Moan for Man that we just watched, they have actors portraying Jack, but silently to, you know, narration voiceover. So in Go Moan for Man, this guy's name was Bill Mabon, and in Howl, that fantastic dramatization of Ginsberg's, the whole story around that with James Franco. That entire script is only the text of Howl, the transcript of the court case, and interviews that Alan gave. So there's not a composed word in that. I mean, composed by a screenwriter in that whole movie. So there's times that they got an actor playing Jack, and it's this Todd Rotondi, and then there was a Canadian, Jack Kerouac's Road, that had a Carl Helmley portray him, and then in that John Antonelli's Kerouac movie, they got, again, a guy quite prominent in the movie, but he never says a line, but he's just sort of walking around doing stuff, as John Coulter. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Johnny Depp reciting on the road in a bar. Probably the best beat documentary called The Source. So there's a number of cats that have done it, but they don't actually really portray Jack in a kind of cinematic, theatrical way. So just a reminder to turn your cell phone ringers off if you haven't. That would be a bummer if that went off in the middle of some great dramatic scene. Okay, so we'll riff into, okay, so the first thing we're going to show is Robert Frank's home movie, which was filmed in June, I'm pretty positive it's June 59, it's not dated, but just by looking at what people are wearing on the streets of Manhattan, it wasn't July or August, so I got to think it was June. I think there's only, you're going to see Jack, I think it's a 5-minute, total of 5 minutes or 7 minutes or 5 minutes, of that silent 16 millimeter footage, shot with the same camera that he had just shot Pull My Daisy with, between January, was shot between January 2nd and April of 59. And then, so, 6 weeks, a couple months later, he brings out the same camera and shoots 5 minutes of the gang hanging out on 3rd Avenue and 9th Street in the East Village. And so I'm just Julian has narrowed it down to the exact 2 minutes of just the Jack footage from the 5 minutes. And so there's very little actual Jack on film. I think there's only 7 times he ever showed up on film. Let's go to, we didn't want to. Not yet. This is the Steve Allen show. This Robert Frank footage. CBC Radio did a filmed interview with him in French in 1959. Then there's a few seconds of footage from the prankster party where the last time Jack and Neil were ever in the same room. And then Nanda Pavano interviewed him in Italy in '66, but he's drunk and he's speaking French a bunch of the time. Then CBC, God bless Canada, also did an interview in '67, and then Buckley's Firing Line. And I think those are the only 7 instances where you can see Jack Kerouac moving in an image. So it's pretty rare. There's not much to go on here. So where do I want to go? Okay, so in this clip you're going to see Lucian Carr, his wife Sessa, their 3 kids, including Caleb, who went on to some fame and success, Mary Frank, and their 2 kids, Pablo and Andrea. Yeah, it's colorized, just FYI. And a few seconds into it, you're going to see that image, which I think is one of the nicest, coolest. I was trying to come up with something for Jack, and so I wanted to take something, if I could get an image of him that was actually from film footage. So you're going to see that quick second in here, about a few seconds in. So, all right, let's roll it. Oh yeah, it's silent, right? Silent and colorized. There, watch. There, That's the shirt he's wearing on the cover of one of his albums. There's Mary Frank. Watch this interaction between how she does not back down from him. She's going at it, and she's just like, yeah, shut up. Look at that. She just does not back down. And then he does. I love that last moment where he's going away with the... Okay, now I'll listen. So there it is. That's the 2 minutes of Jack. So did you hear the one about the time the beatnik, the UPI reporter, and the filmmaker walked into a bar? So I love that about the way Mary Frank is sort of standing up to Jack there, and like, you know, that stereotype about sort of the sexism or the misogyny or something of the men from back in those days, but the women were not pushovers. And you know, you talk to the ones that were around then, and you know, they say that like of the men of that era, the beats were like way more open-minded and allowing the women to, you know, kind of have a say in things. And I just love that few seconds of footage there where Jack's trying to, like, you know, oh, I got all these ideas, and she's just like, well, I'll give you my ideas. And so that thing could have been shot this weekend, that footage, you know? And you think about, like, I'm really big on the women in the Beat generation were, one of the things that has to get, you know, I think is getting corrected as time goes on, were really drivers of the whole thing. It was Carolyn moving to, well, first LA and then San Francisco that caused Neil to go there, which caused Jack and Alan to follow. So like, they wouldn't have ended up in San Francisco if it wasn't for freaking Carol and Cassidy. And they wouldn't have got together in the first place if it wasn't for Edie Kerouac on 108th Street in Morningside Heights knowing Lucian from her art class. That was the whole reason Jack ended up meeting Bill Burroughs and Lucian Carr. So, and I guess Alan was, I think it's the same thing. I think that's how we met Alan too. So the whole Beat generation wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Edie Kerouac, and they wouldn't have been in San Francisco if it wasn't for Carolyn Cassidy. So I think the women were pretty important in the Beat generation. And then just last about this thing was 1959 was a really good year for film and Jack. They shot Pull My Daisy between January and April. We got this June footage, and the principal photography for the Subterraneans was shot between August and October. So that's a movie, a short, and like a home movie, all shot in 1959. So I wish he had remained as prolific as he did. Okay, all right. I wish he had more years like 1959. If he did, we'd sure have, this would be a lot longer show. Okay, Pull My Daisy, the masterpiece. My sort of thesis about this is it's the greatest single creation of the Beat generation because it is this collaboration between all of them. And it's, so we've got the visuals, we've got Robert Frank is the cinematographer, for God's sake. It's shot in an artist's loft in Greenwich Village, Albert Leslie's. It's got Jack's maybe 28 best audio minutes on tape, and it's all scored by Dave Amram. So they're really, and it's shooting them in their prime, 1959, relatively speaking. So they're in their youth, certainly. So it's my thesis that Pull My Daisy is the single best creation of the Beat generation. And so you might know that this was sort of Act 3 of his Beat generation play that he wrote, and he apparently read it all into, like made an audio recording of it, which I don't know where that is. Does anybody know if that exists? It's certainly never been released or anything, but Robert Frank heard this tape, and he said, that's what we should film, Jack. And Robert being a filmmaker, aspiring at the time. So it was kind of Robert Frank that seized on this. And the scene, I'm sure you've all seen Daisy multiple times, and it's based on a real event that took place at the Cassidy household in Los Gatos, I guess. You can read, Carolyn writes her version of that night. You can read it, I think it's in chapter 45 of Off the Road, so you can get her interpretation of it. It was shot silently on the 16 mil, and then they had to overdub the you know, the vocal track and the music. Because 16 millimeter cameras in 1959, they didn't have sound. I don't know if you know, but it was very cool that, so D.A. Pennebaker and the Maysles brothers, both independently, were sort of inventors, and they came up with a way to carry like a Nagra, a cassette deck, reel to reel, like with them, and have it plugged into the camera so that they can get an actual live, real recording of what the camera was doing. And there's a great photo of Pennebaker on the Dylan tour. He's wearing a top hat, he's got the camera, and you can see like it's sort of a telephone cord wire coming down from his camera across his chest to the recording device. And so that was the beginning of being able to film and make audio recording at the same time, and those two guys were the pioneers of it, and it was just about 4 or 5 years after this was shot. So, and so all of this is real, all this happened, and of course Gregory wasn't there, Jack was, and Jack did sit down cross-legged on the floor at the bishop's feet, and so Gregory is in the role of Jack Kerouac, and so here's the first interpretation of Kerouac on film.
Bishop, I want to ask you some serious questions about Buddhism, which I understand you know all about. Well, I know something about it. Nevertheless, he says, is it true that all the ignoos that come falling inside the magic beer bottle, Magian candlestick? I wasn't sorry, I was goofing there. Bishop says, goofing? He said, yes, goofing means I'm playing around with words. I want to ask you some really serious questions. Bishop says, So Gregory says, now look, I'm going to ask you something that concerns all of us. He said, is it true that we're all in heaven now and that we don't know it? And that if we knew it, we would still know it. But that because we don't know it, we go around and act just the way that we do when we know it. But isn't it strange to realize that Buddhism is all involved with the fact that you don't have to get one way or the other about anything, and you can do anything you want, really.
Cool. That moment where Alan goes and squeezes in between the bishop's mother and aunt, Carolyn describes that having happened in the real time when it happened in '55, I think it was. It's so sort of typical of Alan, like just kind of getting in people's faces and, you know, doing what is not normally, you know, condoned and, you know, normal behavior. But that really happened, and like I say, I do recommend checking out Carolyn's version of it, because also, you know how the Amram character plays Pat Mez McGillicuddy? Well, there was a Pat who was there, and he was this guy that Neil was trying to set up with Carolyn, hoping she'd sort of start to have an affair with this guy, which would give him more time to go and be screwing around with Natalie Jackson in San Francisco. But so there was a Pat in the real event when this went down. Okay, we got to keep moving here. All right, so.